Can you imagine you're going into Walmart to do some shopping and bargaining at the checkout? Visualize the face of the cashier and the people standing in line behind you when you were trying to make up the price of the bread or the cereal. What would the world look like if we all negotiated everything? I guess that at some point in the example, you'd be gently asked to pay and leave. The reason that no one will even negotiate with you in such a place is because it is not the cashier's interest to sell you and serve you, and it is not within her competence to set the final price of the product. And yet you try to squeeze even more purchase value out of your money, right? For some reason, everyone accepted this state of affairs, such as haggling in supermarkets or in the clothes shops is somehow not good and that it is not socially acceptable. And in a sense, the seller who sets the price tag always wins. Today, we will talk about the art of negotiation, what it is and why it is worth knowing how to do it. The sale itself has been going on for more than 100 years. And I can tell you one thing, without skillfully defending your own interests, you'll fail. So forgive me for lecturing you, but seriously, each of us would like to draw more purchasing power from our cash, don't we? Hi, my name is Sophie, and you are watching Psychology Unleashed, a YouTube channel established to exploring psychology, life hacks, and book reviews to inspire you. If you are interested in these matters, subscribe to our channel. Negotiations that end successfully are almost the same as forcing the shop assistant to our terms. It is still partly true. I can't count how many times I've witnessed such a hard, straightforward, and rude people while working in the creative industry. But you can be smart about this instead. How? Just knowing the negotiation techniques. Knowing that it's all a game, a trick. That it's not like having money, always has power and can manage a slave labor force. Negotiation should be seen as a partnership. Why? Because nowadays the ecosystem of companies is more and more interconnected. What's more, the relationship ecosystem, if we go down to the level of ordinary people, it is also a system of extremely complex relationships. If we have forced someone to accept a humiliating offer, meeting that person at one of many business meetings or conferences will definitely get a negative recommendation. Even if we are the one in the driver's seat, we will have at least one enemy. You can ask from the other side, how would you feel about this format of negotiation? Because the answer will be the first way of thinking about negotiation based on the Warren Buffett formula. 10, 10, 10. 3 tens represent Warren's decision-making process. This is asking yourself 3 questions. How will I feel about it in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? And it's an honest case. Some negotiations from the past I still think about till this day, so maybe the idea that in 10 months you will meet the person that you are negotiating with will stop you from practicing dirty negotiation techniques. And this leads us to the next rule. Win-win. The principle that both sides win is often criticized and is very utopian and inadequately representing reality. But think about it, the point of view depends on this. Buyers and sellers have their needs and expectations. If the transaction has managed to reach a compromise that reconciles the needs and expectations of both parties, why not? Win-win is a concept that requires one thing, that both buyers and sellers want and understand that they are trading with a person and maybe they will come back to that person in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years. For example, when buying a car, we can agree to a smaller discount than we expected, provided the seller gives us an additional guarantee, either a longer service or anything to compensate us for that amount. It may turn out that, thanks to good negotiations, a mechanic, once reducing the amount, will get 2 more customers from the customer. Something for something. But in the sense that both parties want to leave the transaction satisfied. Thinking about this dynamic, that one wants to somehow meet the requirements of the other, leads us to another point. Weight-based. That means everything is important in negotiations. Imagine this relationship as putting more elements on the scales. For example, the buyer demands a substantial discount. Now, the seller has a perfectly legitimate right to demand something co-consuming. What will it be? I don't know, but as a negotiator, you have to be prepared for it. Is the price below market of the competitor? Maybe they had an exclusivity agreement with their supplier, for example, 1 year, 100% prepayment, withdrawal from a complaint or reasons of reduced quality, but it's usually better to follow a simple example. If you're selling something, never accept a discount as such. You can fight with more complex techniques. The basic concept is always demand something in return. Sometimes, when a customer expects a certain discount to be fully satisfied, I usually disagree. But for a symbolic 5%, I will agree on one condition. For this 5%, I will get 100% prepayment. This kind of creative technique shouldn't surprise anybody these days. Conflict does not mean the end of negotiations. I know that there will be someone in the comments who will write this. Yeah, simple. Go to court and send an enforceable in a month, maybe 2, and you will receive the payment. It can be easy if, for example, such as a freelancer can afford this kind of play, because then they lose a contractor. But it's always a paradox and a huge dilemma. Because if such a service provider who is somehow bypassed can afford this type of task, the loss of a contractor and court execution may be more profitable to wait anyways. This is a paradox of choice, which is played out in the heads of many entrepreneurs I know. This gives us another interesting negotiating idea. Negotiate with yourself more often than with other people. Life is more or less one big conscious choice. Now, let us return to the earlier example of the paradox of choice, whether to go to court or wait. Someone can write or go to court because it is immoral and unethical by bypassing people, and as a rule, it must be done. And rightfully so, only those who do not go will be right too. Why? Because they have negotiated within themselves comfort and peace of mind. They prefer to take care of the core of their business rather than burn themselves out in a barren conflict. Hence, this paradox takes the form of shades of grey, rather than a uniform answer to what to do when someone uses their strength to push us. But this makes us realize too, be aware of your negotiating position. When you have no arguments, you have nothing to put on the scales, and a conflict will only satisfy your ambitions for retaliation. Maybe it's better to just not retaliate. When we enter into negotiations with a new supplier, we meticulously analyze the conditions. Why? Because your negotiating position is very weak, and you enter a new professional partnership for the first time. There is always a seller on the other side. So, not only do you have to start collecting arguments, but you also need to know where to look for them. Knowing this in advance, your bargaining position is better. The more time you give yourself, the better. Of course, the seller can limit your time, then serious clashes start. Then you must know how to value your insufficient knowledge. Within one word, risk. Learn to value the risk. Risk and responsibility are the two most valued things on the market. Companies and employers can pay a lot of money for minimalizing risk and taking great responsibility. Be aware of this. With every bigger transaction, there is a risk. With every bigger job position, there is more responsibility. Try to calculate it every time and relate it to the investment or salary you are negotiating. Make your counterparty aware of these facts, that you can see such a risk or feel that this responsibility is simply worth more. You can calculate it as your working hours for repairing potentially suspicious elements in the initial conditions, or hours invested additionally in a position. I hope you will use these tools to your advantage, and I invite you to leave us a comment and tell us what you think. I thank you for your attention and invite you to discover our channel. If you are not yet one of the subscribers of the channel, Psychology Unleashed, please click the subscribe button and wait for our next animation.